Good morning, world. This is Steve Rao on Pod TV's World Edition. And on World Edition, we bring you great news from around the world, talk about sustainable innovation, and what we can do to build back better and stronger during the COVID pandemic. Today, I'll be with us for about 30 minutes, but I wanted to thank everyone for your patience as I am working really hard in a very, very tough competitive race to serve on the town of Morrisville's council. With that being said, I wanted to begin with what I call the Joe Biden dance. Last week, progressive Democrats blocked the $1 trillion infrastructure bill on the notion that it just didn't do enough. This angered many moderate Democrats like Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, who were opposed to the $3.5 trillion social safety net. The progressives were holding the moderates hostage, and it became very difficult for them to navigate through this situation. President Biden went to Capitol Hill on Friday, and he had to make a decision. Who would he support? Publicly, he sided with the progressives, many of them who were not supporting him during the primary. And then he now is saying that he would need the support of moderate Democrats and that this bill would need support of moderate Democrats. So we don't really understand what side of the world he's looking at, but the president said he supports the social safety net bill, but now is saying that he needs the support of the moderates, which means he might support the $1 trillion infrastructure bill. This is really creating a situation now where it could be weeks until a bill and compromise is reached. And the longer it takes and the more time and jockeying that occurs, it could be the losers at the end of the day will be the American people. Because if no bill passes, we will get no infrastructure. And we will fall behind and continue to fall behind other nations who are investing in their roads, their bridges, and of course, climate change and these kinds of sustainable measures that we need. We'll be talking about this issue and also the Supreme Court beginning a new session this Monday. The court's approval ratings are very low, but they will be taking decisions on gun rights, abortion, as we will continue to navigate the makeup of this court and what it means for American policy. We wish Mr. President well in his what I call Potomac two-step, dancing to the progressive music, but also having to listen to those moderates in his party. Boy, it must be fun. Good luck with your dance, Mr. President. Now we have Shaquille Latimer from Down Under, Mark Lee. Thank you, gentlemen, and it's quite amazing to be here with my distinguished guests, and I'm really excited to see you here. And tell me a little bit about what your thoughts are about this whole infrastructure deal.
Glad to be here, and I know Shaquille's probably got some thoughts about that as well. But before we get on to that, I did want to bring on the rest of our panel, which of course includes Sasha Star, that amazing chess player, and of course an amazing investor as well from Canada right now. And of course we've got the head of IBM TV with us as well, none other than Nick Palviva. So
we have Sasha Star, the famous star, Chess Show, Economics Monday, and Nick Paladiva. So, guys, as we start the show, I'm here for 30 minutes today, but I wanted to talk about, and the other thing we're going to talk about, just to bring it up, but we're going to talk about it more tomorrow, is COVID cases now going down again. And we're seeing the cycle every 2 months of COVID going up, COVID going down. But let's talk about infrastructure bills. So now I'm a little bit confused. So Biden said he's siding with the progressives on them blocking the legislation to say they want more. Moderates are upset and enraged, like Manchin and Sinema. And now the president's saying, well, wait a minute, I also need the moderate support. And meanwhile, and by the way, it might take weeks and weeks for us to agreement. Are we punting the political football down the road, guys? Because it seems like we've been talking about this now for 3 or 4 months, right?
Definitely sounds that way to me. Sounds like some more political two steps going on all kinds of ways. I do see that the progressives claim that they're open to compromising with those moderate senators and things along those lines. But we know that sometimes in politics, folks will definitely say what they've got to say in order to get elected. I actually saw quite a few of the candidates here in Durham out and about, and actually I can loop the two issues in together because they were out and about at a public event. Because I actually had to go to work at the Cultural Arts Center that I work for this past weekend. And as a matter of fact, y'all will see me at that venue a few days of this week because I've got to do some stuff during the morning time. So I'll be coming from that other location. But outside, while a wedding was going on inside of the center, was a street festival. And there was quite a few people walking around, going to the street festival and checking out the street festival. And of course, I ran into our several of our candidates, everybody from county commissioners to at least one of the mayoral candidates and a number of others, because it's political season. So if it's political season, what do? You go to the public events and try to gather the support of the public out there. So I did see quite a few of the city council candidates, like I said, at least Elaine O'Neill, one of the mayoral candidates, and a number of others that were in that sphere.
When is the election?
That election is actually in November, so they're actually doing early voting right now, and I think early voting has got another 2 weeks to go. So they are definitely out hitting the streets and trying to make sure that people are getting those votes.
Did Brianna Freeman win?
She is actually one of those people that was out there campaigning. So I actually ran into her, talked to her, and had a chance to see how her campaign was going. She's got some folks, including one of the guests that has appeared here on this show, that has actually been very adamant against her and has actually been kind of launching things going on in that regards as well. Because you know that you can make some very good bedfellows in a campaign, but you can also make some very interesting enemies as well. So that's one of the things that we were talking about, because she is definitely on the campaign trail trying to see what she can say about what folks may be saying against her. Because like I said, that's what happens during these campaigns.
Yeah, I know. Believe me, I'm going through that myself. But we'll get back to that in a minute. But so Shaquille Latimer, let's start with Shaquille Latimer, and then we'll go to Sasha Starr. Talk about this for a few minutes. Then we're going to talk a little about the Supreme Court. They're going to session today. What is your take about this political gridlock now? Do you think that we're going to see an infrastructure bill, or do you think this is just politics and it's just going to play it out and it's going to be dead on arrival?
I don't think you'll see it, and I hope that you don't see it, to be honest. I think it's terrible for the American people. Just to start off with, it's a complete lie anyway. Like, we already know that. And I think that people are sick and tired of being lied to. It's not infrastructure. It's not human infrastructure. It is spending money on social services and things that don't have a direct and obvious economic benefit to the larger economy. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with a left-leaning party, especially, to want to provide childcare and provide, more healthcare options and things like that. There's nothing wrong with advocating for that. But to hold up the hard infrastructure, bridges, roads, airports, that's been agreed on. There's been bipartisan support for that. And they're holding that up and running the time down to the debt ceiling because progressives won't budge. And they're not budging knowing that the majority of Americans do not support this, knowing that the majority of Americans are very, very unhappy with the current rates of inflation. We know that Joe Biden has some of the lowest approval ratings of any president in history, in modern history, at this time. It's very unclear what his successes actually have been so far, because there's a lot of focus on his failures, Afghanistan being, I think, the most obvious one. But, the southern border has not been very good. He said that he would get the coronavirus under control. That was a silly commitment to make, because nobody can guarantee that. But more than anything, what I'll say is Joe Biden ran as a moderate. And if you look at the last election, I don't think that many people found his lack of giving a speech to be particularly endearing. A lot of people in America voted for him because he wasn't Donald Trump. And the idea was that he would be, more of a compromiser, somebody who had enough political experience to be able to negotiate things across the aisle, unite the parties, unite America. and really run things with a steady hand. And as soon as he got there, he's left moderate stuff aside and has gone straight down the path of the most divisive policies of progressive Democrats. And knowing that it's not polling well, he's done it anyway. Kamala Harris knows that she's not polling well, so she's had an emergency public relations team come in to try to help her to regain her public image. This is just disastrous policies. And at some point, the government should understand that they are not there in America to rule over Americans. They are there to be representative of the country's desires. And if you as a politician genuinely believe that something is in the country's best interest, but your country does not agree with you, you have to just accept and respect the will of the people. The people did not ask for this. It's polling very badly. They don't want it. And what exactly do they expect moderate Democrats to do? Manchin and Sinema are from those sort of blue dog working class Democrat areas. They both won in West Virginia and in Arizona on razor thin margins. They won't get re-elected if they support this. So putting them in that sort of a position is terrible. And I think and I hope that other Democrats who have sort of rumor is around the Capitol that there are other Democrats that are also concerned about what happens to their seats in the future. I do hope that they realise, look, this is not going to happen, and they need to kill this bill straight away. And if they don't, I'll just say, sorry, Sasha, if they don't kill it straight away, if they're able to somehow force it through by using, pressure,
reconciliation,
Yep. If that's what they do, I think that will bode very, very poorly for the Democrats in the future, because there's no question inflation will dramatically increase. And I think the Republicans will never let them live that down. So this is politics. I was hoping that under Trump, the level of viciousness had reached an apex, but obviously I was wrong.
Yes. I mean, it's crazy times out there. And I think that, we're seeing more and more of these political games going on. And Sasha Starr, what are your perspectives on this?
Okay. You have to really look into what's happened and find the real reasons for any move. And I was able to find something interesting in the last few days. Number one, I've said many times during the last week that politicians have three areas for what they're working. Number one is the good of a country. Number two is good for their party. And number three is the good of themselves. So many politicians, and probably most of them, but I don't want to make general observations. Of course, most of them are working for their own good. That's quite obvious to me. And if you are taking, let's start with Joe Manchin, who is a great fighter for a fair infrastructure bill. He's against climate control. That's what, and he never says that straight. He's going around it, and he's talking about, okay, I'm happy with this figure, but I'm not happy with that figure, so on. Why don't you say that you're getting $500,000 dividends from the coal companies? Tell just that, so at least people will understand your motivation and they will understand why you are fighting for that. No, he's never said that. He's saying $1.5 billion, it's $1.5 trillion, okay. Oh no, that's too much. That's too much. He's playing games, and very clever games, because he is now holding with cinema, but I don't read much about cinema. I think it's real nothing. But he is holding all Democratic Party. Now, so once progressives understood what he's doing, now they're saying, you know what? Here's what we're going to do to you. You are going now to support our agenda. And if not, you're out of power. You lose. You may all as well resign, starting from Biden to all the Democratic congressmen and Senate people and everybody. Every Democrat just resign, go home, pack your thing, get your dividends, and that's the end of story. Because this party, today's Democratic Party, cannot govern. They were elected to govern. And if they cannot govern, they have to definitely get out there.
Yeah, there is a difference between governing and campaigning, and I think part of the problem is that we just can never get out of the campaign. These campaigns every 2 years.
Well, the best way to campaign is to keep the promises that you make when you're campaigning before the election, right? Not to just not to just get into power and then do the exact opposite of what you said you were going to do. That's just an absolute nonsense. Judge Judy wrote a book called "Don't Pee on My Leg and Tell Me It's Raining." Don't tell me that healthcare for only people of color is infrastructure. It's not. It's a social service. Nothing wrong with it. But don't pee on my leg and tell me it's raining and tell me that's the equivalent of building a bridge or repaving a road. Okay? And please, when you want to have $3.5 trillion in spending, which by the time it goes, by the time it's spent, it's $5.5 trillion. Don't tell me that $5.5 trillion equals zero. Okay?
The math doesn't make any sense.
Imagine an American child in primary school, or in kindergarten. They're 4 years old. And they're asked to count, and they go 1, 2, 3, 4, 0. And the kindergarten student's like, absolutely correct. How ridiculous.
Hey, Nick, just really quickly, and it comes back to what y'all are talking about and everything. I'd love to hear everybody's thoughts about this. But there's actually, I love when the journalists of the world try to come out and launch a campaign. But there's a new paper that is out. It's not all that new, but it's definitely come out in the recent days and everything that reveals something that I think that we all knew in the first place. And it actually comes back to the world of investment that I know both you and Shaquille and Sasha are involved in. But are we really surprised by what the Pandora Papers, which is a paper that is out in the Washington Post has reported, has disclosed, which is that the cachet of many of the wealthy people of the world has offshore structures and trusts in tax havens in places such as Panama, Dubai, Monaco, Switzerland, and the Cayman Islands.
Sorry.
That's been going on for years.
Monaco is not a tax haven. Monaco is nothing at all like a tax haven. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, but they're also saying that they're exposing the secret offshore affairs of 35 world leaders, including people like Putin and the head of Jordan and a number of other places. They're also saying that the files include disclosures about major donors to the Conservative Party, which apparently is raising difficulties for Boris Johnson and everything. And they're looking at all these different figures around the world, and they're saying that they are doing all kinds of things around shell companies and things like that, including investing in luxury items such as property and yachts. I mean, I thought that's what the world already knew was going on. So why are we even spending time on this?
Mark, I know this will be a big surprise to you, but rich people like money.
Okay? I know that.
And they like to keep money, et cetera. But I want to digress a little bit about these so-called progressives, since Shaquille woken my eyes to this group that I'm a member of. And here we go. We'll put them right here. You hear this group? Sierra Club, right?
Okay. And how much I had to fight you guys off air.
Well, the thing is,
you guys admit that they were actually a white group that cares nothing about the environment.
Easy. Okay, so they send me contributions I send them contributions every year because I like their mission statement of, helping the environment and all that other stuff. However, here's the reality of it, and I just looked at their Form 990, which is their IRS form. They collect about 170 million, a little over 100 million in donations from fools like me. How much do they spend on salaries for guys like them? 70 million. Almost all the money that goes into this organization goes to pay salaries for people in San Francisco. Then, what you pointed out quite correctly, they are not really there to help the environment. They have all their wild causes. So with that, here's what I'm doing with their contribution. Ripping it up, I'm going to throw it away, because the thing is, they're complete progressive fraud, and that's really what I think about that wonderful organization. I'm sorry I was conned for so many years, but anybody wants to go check it, we should do a whole special on this group. Go look at the Form 990.
The reason why I pointed that out about the Sierra Club, I absolutely love the name Sierra. I think Sierra
good. By the way, their magazine's good. The organization sucks.
And I really I am so disheartened that they have decided to become this woke and forget about their core mission of the environment. And the reason I'm so disheartened about it is I don't think that anybody on this panel would ever say that I don't care about the environment, but I think a lot of people on this panel would consider me to be centre-right. On some issues I am, on some issues I'm centre-left, but I'm pretty close to the centre on most issues. The environment is something I care deeply about. And I always point out that, like, if we're going to go down solar panels and that's not the most environmentally efficient way to do something, that we should then look for other options, other things that we can do. It really disappoints me when I see organizations that are supposed to care about the environment not doing anything and not having real conversations. Like, if we're going to go to electric cars, what is the environmental cost of lithium batteries? Is that perhaps worse than what we're currently doing? Those are all really important questions. And if the answer is, look, maybe they are worse, what other options are available to us and we can't have those conversations, you really do a disservice to the planet. And Greta Thunberg is kind of right when she goes to the United Nations and says, how dare you, not in relation to stealing her childhood, but, how dare the politicians and the political class not do anything about issues that really are of concern to everybody. But the young people didn't come up with this themselves. It's been drummed into their heads by our generation and the baby boomers. And then when they care about it, we don't do anything about it. It's a really deplorable state of affairs. And I think that the Sierra Club really needs to have a very good, long, hard look at itself.
Okay, think about it. Imagine
will they get enough public backlash? When there's enough public backlash against it, then they will. But
they have a big scam going. Can you imagine they're actually a 501c4, not a 501c3. Can you imagine an organization that collects about 100 million paying 70 million to salaries and executive compensation? They don't give a rat's rear.
Well, in fairness, I would say that the NRA, I dare say, would probably have similar issues. I mean, didn't they have an issue in New York where they were investigated for the amount of expenditure going to executive pay? That's obviously a right-wing organisation, which again, I point out, they shouldn't be a right-wing organisation. They're supposed to be an organisation centred around the Second Amendment, not about right-wing and conservative politics.
Yeah, but a lot of these organisations aren't. And see, the thing is, they're not transparent. If they were transparent, they would actually take their form. Remember, they always want Trump to disclose their tax return. By the way, their tax return is disclosed, but they never put it on their magazine. What they need to really do is put it on their magazine, let people know that when you make a donation to the Sierra Club, you're paying for their executives. Help them, and you're paying for all their crazy causes. Okay, this is known in the United States.
I have an interview with them tonight. I have an interview with them.
Well, Steve, you can ask them. Please ask them how Black Lives Matter, how transgender rights, how anti-Trumpism, anti-republicanism, and abortion and abortion rights being healthcare. Can you please ask them how even in the most sort of woke way of stringing things together, how that has something to do with the environment?
Votes, he's not looking to alienate. See, we are not looking for Sierra Club to vote.
Well, you better not alienate them, because it's only okay for them to do it. If they want to alienate half of the country who voted for Donald Trump by calling them racist, sexist, etc., 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 and so therefore, because racism is a form of climate change, or there's a cause of climate change, they don't mind alienating half of them, but half of the country. But when half of the country says, hey, sorry, like, what's going on? Oh, no, we can't alienate them. I know, Steve.
Part of the problem that the Sierra Club that is local might have different views than those that are national, because the national Sierra Club, as I was pointing out when we were having that discussion, is, they're playing that political game of gamemanship as well. A lot of times organizations will jump onto whatever the cause is. As I told you, Shaquille, I know some people that are definitely on the left that are not biggest fans of the woke culture either.
Mark, who cares?
I know some that are on the right.
Who cares? That's like me saying, you know what? Not a lot of chess grandmasters, as a general rule, chess grandmasters don't like the open that I use, King's Gambit, because past club level it's not very effective, right? And then someone says, well, actually, I know a guy who's a chess grandmaster that loves to play it. That's an exception to the rule. Okay, it doesn't matter that you happen to know somebody who disagrees with something on the left. The issue is, what does the left push out? Nobody's voting for the person that you happen to know who happens to also be in these groups. Okay,
No,
people are voting. People are voting for what people are listening to. Mark, people are listening to what these organisations actually say, right, and what they actually do. What do they say?
The point that I was making was that, and it's like with anything, what people say in these organizations on the national level is not always the same as what their cause is on the local level. When I look at the Sierra Club locally at these festivals and everything, they're talking about, like, you know, the Eno River, which is a local river, or Ellaby, and they are talking about environmental issues. I have never seen the local chapter talk about some of these woke things that you pointed out, and rightfully so, are on the national front. So I also find that a lot of local organizations aren't necessarily following the national dictate that might be given by their organizations. They are following what was the historical agenda of whatever that organization is about. So when I talk to people that are in that self, so that's what I'm talking about, like localism or parochialism versus nationalism.
If Sierra Club California wants to have a national protest about Black Lives Matter, okay, and how Black lives is the cause of climate change, members of your local Sierra Club are going to join in on that because it's something that they actually pushed out, okay, from head office. I mean, what you're trying to suggest, it'd be like, let's use a right-wing example. What you're trying to suggest is that if the local chapter of the NRA has members that don't agree with one of the political positions from NRA headquarters, then people who are local in that area should join the local NRA. Of course, local chapters are going to have various views and different views because they have a different demographic depending on where they are. And people in rural Mississippi are probably faced with things that are different to, very wealthy San Francisco. And it might actually be really nice if that was recognized. If you want me to recognize that in a club that's as divisive as what the Sierra Club is and as politically partisan as what the Sierra Club is, maybe the Democrats should actually consider that when they try to suggest that moderates who only just won in West Virginia and Arizona and a few other places, but those two notably, they only just won because they have to actually listen to and represent in a representative government the views and the desires of the people that actually live in their constituencies and in their states. So maybe the Democrats could consider that. And same goes for the Republicans too, as a matter of fact.
Okay, just for some more data, here are the executives in the Sierra Club. Remember, it's purportedly not profit. Okay, the poor person makes $156,000. They make $156,000 to $300,000 per year working for the Sierra Club, and the total compensation, because this is just the disclosed. There's there's deferred comp that we don't see, is $79 million a year. So when you look at it, the Sierra Club, you're looking at a group that is basically lining their own pockets. But in terms of helping the environment, I don't know how much it helps the environment.
They spent $7 million on marketing.
The Pandora paper was saying that rich folks are doing. So that doesn't surprise me about nonprofits. And like I said, I've been involved in that space. So I also know that a lot of nonprofits also stay on the dole much longer than they're supposed to, because the rule is you're supposed to be getting in the money and then working your way off of the dole, meaning the government dole or the bigger foundation.
They spent $7 million on marketing. They spent $7 million on marketing and $1.8 million in consultancy services from Facebook.
Well,
okay,
consultants are making a killing.
And this is a form that they're required to fill out, but it's not complete. This is the form 990 you get from the IRS in 2019. Notice Sierra Club brings in about 140 million. They'll spend 79 million on themselves, almost 80 million of the 140. So if you look at it, a lot of the money that you send to the Sierra Club goes to line the pockets of the executive branch of the Sierra Club. Now, do they disclose this? No, they have to send it to the IRS. You got to go look for it. But are they going to tell their members about things like this? No, and they all live in San Francisco, high rent district. We understand that. They're all wonderful people. I'm sure they are. But let's get real. This is what's really going on. And they call this progressive? Hey, look, give me a bloody break. You know?
Yeah. What's the saying? God, I just want to hear you say it once, Nick. What's it say?
It says Don't pee on my
Don't
leg.
pee on my leg and
It's
tell me
raining.
it's raining.
Yeah,
You
you
love
know,
that saying.
Yeah,
That's
well,
your
I just
favorite
want to
saying.
address something that you said, okay?
this is
Because this is the same. This is the same group that also goes on about wealth inequality, where their executives are earning $300,000 a year, Mark.
I know, right?
This
Yeah.
this is the group.
Well,
This is the group. The majority of their members, I would say, are probably
Are
earning
not-
a lot less than the executives.
Yeah,
that they're
exactly.
paying, right?
No, but that's just
By
about
the way,
any
what I
organization.
say-
So let me just let me just address something, Nick. Rich people like money. Okay. Let me just say something about that. Okay. Yes, it is unfair that there are so many loopholes being used by the wealthy in order to shelter their wealth. But it's also really, really unfair the way the government just wants to keep taking and taking and taking and taking from them. Republicans want to take and take and take from them in order to go and blow money on international affairs and fights that you really don't need to be in, and the military-industrial complex. And the Democrats want to take the money because there's always some social service, there's always somebody who's downtrodden, always somebody who misses out, and it's always rich people's fault. So when Bernie Sanders was asked a few years ago, he was on a debate stage, I think, and he said, well, it doesn't matter if the rate is 70% or 80% or 90% because nobody pays it. What we really have to focus on is the effective rate. Here's another way of putting that. If I'm really rich, right, and I'm earning, I don't know, $50 million a year, okay, or $100 million a year, I'm not expected to pay the headline 70 or 80%. So that means that if I don't use the loopholes, okay,
Right.
then I'm going to end up paying a much higher effective rate than what the government actually intended for me to pay. Can I make the suggestion that if I'm earning $100 million a year, I'm probably not a complete imbecile to start off with? Secondly, my financial situation is probably much more complex. I've probably got bonds and shares and real estate and a whole heap of different assets, which means that I'm not going to be able to go to the shopping center or the shopping mall and do a $99 on-the-spot tax return, right? I'm probably going to have to pay some accountants. They're going to refer me to the tax lawyers, et cetera, et cetera. That's how the system works. So let's get away from this. It's just rich people, just taking and taking. And rich people's wealth, by the way, is not being earned, and they are not responsible for the deprivations of the poor. Okay, they have a moral responsibility to make sure that people within their country and society are able to have basic services, but they are not responsible, and nor do they profit as a general rule from the deprivations of the poor, unless they are what is a great way to become wealthy these days, and something that I have no intention of ever doing with my life, unless they are able to lobby government and make sure that their private companies can get their hands on government money, and then they can become billionaires on the back of the taxpayer subsidies and the taxpayer funds.
Hey, Shaquille and Steve, I had a quick question based on that. It's based on something that actually Dr. Eric Keller was talking about recently and everything. And this actually, you may find this to be a woke statement and everything, but I'd love to hear your thoughts about this. One of the arguments that goes on in the African American community and everything is that there is a certain amount of money that is brought in to the community by wages, by maybe even some of the government programs and a number of things in that regard. So there is let's just say trillions of dollars that comes in to the entirety of the African American community. But then the majority, because that particular community is very much of a consumer kind of part of the economy, goes out. So the argument is that the majority of that money goes out and doesn't come back into the community, and therefore it is going to the bigger picture. So that the argument is that you can bring in, and there's even been studies about this, that the African American population brings in billions, maybe even trillions of dollars, but the majority of that goes out and doesn't come back in, whereas other communities actually bring their money back into their community.
And your proposed solution to this calamitous problem affecting black communities in America is what?
The proposal that many people are saying is, it's kind of like a support your community. So just like some of the other communities support.
So why not use
to actually buy business, to actually buy from within your communities, and to actually buy from within your organizations and things of that nature. So I'm just asking, then that's what I'm asking your thoughts on that.
Okay, let me ask you. So
before we go to that,
I'll be very brief here, Steve. Firstly, if that's what you want to do, have the government, instead of the government forcing rich people to contribute money to these communities, why don't you, by force, why don't you have the police with guns force black people in black communities to buy only from black businesses? Why don't you do that? And I'll just remind you that Michelle Obama, just let me finish real quick because it's going to be very brief. Michelle Obama talked about food deserts all across black communities, but every time Walmart's wanted to go into any of them, or a big shopping center, a big grocery chain, they were protested against and told to get out. So hey, what do you want the rest of society to do? Steve?
Oh, I'm so sorry, Shaquille. I want to thank you so much. I have to run, but I want you all to follow up on this healthy debate that we're having with Shaquille Latimer. I'll be back tomorrow morning. My closeout is tomorrow we'll be talking a little bit about the United States Supreme Court, the beginning of the new session which begins today, and the kinds of cases they're going to be looking at, from gun rights to abortion to sexual orientation, all kinds of very interesting cases. They're going to have a long-term impact on the law, looking at the approval ratings of the court. And of course, we'd like to know what's going on with Australia and Canada with COVID, but we're now starting to see numbers go down again in America, about a 2-month cycle. But it's been an interesting show. I got to leave. But my closeout is just the interesting politics that we're in. And Shaquille, you bring up some very good points, but, the progressives and the liberals are so set on what they want to do that the problem is that both parties are just headed on. It's a gladiator sport, and there's no room for compromise. There's no room for deals, and that hurts trust with each other in the government, but trust with the people of our country. And hopefully we on World Edition can talk about what we can do to make government work for everyone. Sometimes it might take sacrificing a little bit of our own beliefs to listen to the other side. But anyway, that's my closeout. It's I call it the old Potomac two-step.
I appreciate it.
I appreciate it. I'll see you tomorrow morning. Thank you.
Sounds good. Appreciate it.
Mark,
coming back to what you were saying.
What do you want society?
I was going to answer your question. Coming back to what you just said, Shaquille. I actually had the pleasure yesterday of talking, actually maybe it was early this morning, to a young lady, and it's actually parallels to what I like us to do here, which is talk about not just the United States, but the world as well. I had the pleasure of talking to a young lady from whose history, I'm not sure that she lives there now, but her history was Rwanda, the country of Rwanda. Most people know of Rwanda because of the genocide and things along those lines. What she told me, which I did not know because I'm always learning about these places, is that Rwanda is actually one of the fastest growing economically countries in Africa. And part of what they did was that they realized that when the genocide was going on, they had people begging to help them and everything. And families were going against families and things of that nature. And the United States and other parts of the world did not come to their aid. So what they decided to do was actually rebuild from within and rebuild their own economy, and it is now one of the fastest growing ones in the world and everything, and particularly in the African nations. A fact that I did not know until I was talking to Ms.
That was awesome. What do you want American society to do? What do you want the wider American community to do to rebuild black areas?
Well,
when black people are protesting and rallying against the introduction of things like big chain grocery stores.
Let's look at the big chain grocery stores. First off, let's be very clear about some of these big chain grocery stores. One of the groups that we have all talked about big time is Amazon. Amazon is a big chain. It's a monster. It owns a lot of things around there.
I'm talking about bricks and mortar.
I'm getting ready to what you're saying. I'm getting ready to what you're talking about. Do you know who owns Whole Foods?
Jeff Bezos.
It's not the point. Mark, that's not the point. No, if black people in black areas don't want big grocery stores to be in their areas, okay, what do you want us to do as a society? Because you're going to have to use force somewhere. You either use.
I don't think you have to use force to encourage entrepreneurship in your own community, whatever that community is. I don't think you have to use force to do that. I don't think you have to use force to create to encourage entrepreneurship within those communities, and that's what most of the people that I am involved with, and some people would call them black capitalists, is what they are encouraging. They're encouraging the building of entrepreneurship. That's why I've used the example of rallies.
Great. That's awesome. All right, that's great. Now let me finish. You have to use force somewhere. Either you use force and go, but Whitey's so rich disproportionately, so we're going to by force take tax money, because if they don't pay the tax dollars for you to encourage, which means hand out subsidies on the basis of skin color, okay, by redistributing wealth from people who are, from whitey, you either use force to take their money and redistribute it to yourself, or you use force to force black consumers to buy from black-owned businesses in black areas.
Like I said, if you create a quality product, which is what I think most people want to do, if you create a quality product and you create it within your own communities, I think that's what certain societies, like even I wish Steve was here, those that are from Indian backgrounds have done and everything. I can name some others, even the Jewish population in New York and everything. So definitely, if you create a quality product and you create it and develop it.
So if it's that simple then, and all they need is encouragement, you can do it. Come on, you can.
And that's what we're doing.
If that's simple, then
we're not asking for government handout.
Then what are you complaining about? What does society do?
I'm saying that is an example of positivity of what's going on in the community. I was explaining that and saying that that's a positive thing that is going on and that it is being encouraged on a regular basis. That's why I brought up.
By whom? By whom?
By folks in that community. If you want me to name names of people,
no, I don't want specific names. So this is your theory about why progressivism, is a positive thing. I mean, that's what we were talking about, right? That's what you responded.
I was saying that some of the agendas of what progressives have said that they want to do, if you want to put it back as progressives and everything, there are some people within that group that also back some of these kind of projects. Do I believe in everything that the progressives put out? No.
So what sort of projects? If you're telling me that they're not trying to get federal tax dollars or even state dollars, but generally federal tax dollars in order to subsidize these programs, what are you saying? The progressives want a whole heap of people to go into black areas and go, good job. You know what you should do? Build a quality product.
That might help.
I just came here to encourage you. Is that what you're telling me? No, what you're telling me is that they want to use federal tax dollars to give money to people.
You need to give specific examples of things where it has worked. And like I said, that is what I've seen a lot of people doing, is giving specific examples of things that have worked in their community, whether that's in St. Louis, whether that's in California, whether that's in North Carolina.
What has worked? Did you get a whole heap of rich white liberals from California, the young ones that went into black communities and went, good job, keep it up. Is that what you meant by encouragement? Is that what you meant by encouragement? Or did you mean encouragement by taking tax dollars off some people in order to give it to other people based on their skin color?
Well, first off, Shaquille, let's get very clear, and I'm going to give you once again another history lesson. One of the greatest programs that exists.
You don't want to answer the question. You don't want to answer the question because you don't want to admit that something that exists based on skin color. You don't want to admit it.
Shaquille,
why? You want to talk about what happened in 1747?
No, it's not 1747. I'm talking about something now I'm talking about something now in this area.
Today, what you want is federal tax dollars to go to people of color. Okay, you're going to get it based on your skin color, and that somehow encourages people to spend money in their own community.
First off, I don't know anybody in the people that I know. Hold on a second, Shaquille. Of the people I know, they are creating programs that have nothing to do with federal money and federal government. You want to talk about Kimberly Stewart, who's building a virtual mall in Indiana, and it's a virtual mall that we all can go to. Doesn't matter whether you're black, white, or purple. You want to talk about a gentleman that's building a Harold.
That's great for those people, but you're talking about the black community.
Building a whole island in California. You want to talk about folks that are doing stuff around that area, and you want to talk about the fact that the what some people call this need to give money to people that are poor and working class, that created the welfare system, or whatever y'all want to call it, and everything in terms of food stamps and giving money. That actually was started originally by the Black Panthers. And people forget that part of the history. The Black Panthers were given food, and the government actually borrowed that program and corrupted it in a lot of ways, because it was actually started by the Black Panthers, this whole idea of giving food to the poor because they were not having enough in that area. And that was in Oakland, California.
Mark, can I just confirm something here? Are you telling me that the churches and the mosques and the synagogues of hundreds of years ago, they didn't feed the poor? It was the Black Panthers that came up with the idea of feeding the poor.
No, I'm just saying that specific idea. And no, the black churches also did it, and I agree with you. And the mosque, did a great job of it. But I was just saying, if you look at the history of how the
Mark,
conservatives in California came up with the idea. They borrowed the idea from the Black
question
Panther.
I asked you several times. You obviously don't want to answer it. That's fine.
Mark, I want to help your cause, and here's a very simple thing what you could do. If black owners, business owners, if they would pay a special tax, so they would have a tax credit of say 20-25%, that's more than enough, so they would pay taxes essentially 20-25% less than others, so they could use the savings to make their products in their stores and their businesses, services, whatever they provide, cheaper. So the black community would benefit from that tremendously, and nobody would be hurt. I mean, no tax collectors, no government, no black people, white people, or whatever people. And this is a very, very effective policy. I think what would happen though that many white people would take black people as partners, so to get these tax credits and
guess what, Sasha? That's going on right now, because I know also, and I've mentioned this into a couple of conversations, that there are people that literally, because of whatever is going on, whether it's black organizations adding a white face because they feel that that's going to help them, or the opposite, white organizations adding a black face because they feel that's going to help them in whatever ways the structures are going. So that's happening now, what you're proposing. So it is actually happening even as we're talking, and things along those lines. Because I do know people that have done that because they try to get into a door and they feel that they can't get into that door. Yes, they will hire a gentleman that is of a different race separate from them. And yes, that does even go on in the 21st century, that there are people that are not getting the entryway into what they want.
If I were to meet a whole heap of Eastern Europeans, if I say, look, I'm still single, I've been in COVID lockdowns for a couple of years, and Eastern European girls are gorgeous, but I can't really get into the Russian club, the Estonian club. What am I going to do? I'm going to take Sasha with me because Sasha's Eastern European, right? It's not because I feel as though Eastern Europeans are racist against me. It's just because he's more culturally like them, right? If I want to go and
that's what goes on in some of the black businesses as well, because they want to get access, and they may not get their access the way if they are organizations that are racist that are not letting them in.
But that's not racism, is it?
Shaquille, you're not right.
Racism in the organization.
And you know what you should do? Ask for a friendly game of chess. The only thing is, when you play females, play Queen's Gambit, not King's Gambit, okay? And you will be more respected for that openings choice as well.
Yes, I know, but I'm not as good as Queen's Gambit. I used to play Queen's Gambit as a kid. That's what I used to always do. And then I changed over to King's Gambit because I liked how aggressive and unbalanced it was. And also because it threw everybody off.
It reflects your personality.
Yeah,
that's right.
What did you say it was? It was
aggressive and unbalanced.
Aggressive and unbalanced. That it does reflect your personality. Well, Mark,
I was actually going to get back to another news story before we wind up and everything, but then it comes back to us not being surprised by some things that go on in the news. But if you watched 60 Minutes yesterday, there was actually a former Facebook product manager that said that she was the whistleblower behind a major leak that happened. And she said, quote unquote, the company has chosen to choose profits over safety. I mean, does this really shock us and everything?
Oh my goodness.
That's what she came out and she
said.
How
could they?
The company has
capitalists, how could they?
Well,
Mark, this is specifically when AOC makes a comment that there has been an enormous amount of environmental damage because companies and capitalists and industrials have put profits above everything else. Profits were more important than the environment. Profits were more important than people, etc. She is absolutely correct. She's absolutely right that is exactly what has happened in history. That is the reason we have government. That is specifically government's responsibility, is to find when there are third-party effects where people are negatively affected or the environment is negatively infected because of the actions of company, and it is their job through legislation and regulations that they enforce to make sure that companies don't do that. The only problem with what AOC says is, well, because these companies have put profits before people, we should become socialists and let the government run everything. And now you've got the comptroller being somebody who no offense, Sasha, she got a Stalin scholarship, right, graduating from the University of USSR or whatever it is, and she believes that the banking system should be completely abolished and everything should be centralized to the Federal Reserve. What sort of nonsense is that? Again, don't pee on my leg and tell me it's raining. Let's be serious.
You love that saying and everything. Hey,
I do. I'm going to have to ring Judge Judy.
Well, I'm going to have to get you in touch with Judge Judy. I have a contact with her as well. So a good friend of mine is
definitely.
A good friend of mine is actually that bailiff that you see on that same show. So I'll reach out to Petrie just so you can meet Judge Judy.
Absolutely. And I think I'd be fascinated with Officer Bird as well. Sasha.
Well, like I said, Officer Bird is
what actually she's alleging is that because she was insider in the Facebook, she was part of the management team. So what she's saying apparently that they knew many sort of on a borderline or quite illegal things what Facebook did, and they withheld that information from shareholders, from Security Exchange Commissions, and therefore she's taking them. It's a gamble on her part, and actually she may suffer quite a bit because obviously if it's not told true, Facebook will take her to court. They will take her to cleaners and bankrupt her, and nobody will pay even $100 to her legal defense fund. However, that's her choice. Probably she calculated that she'll be ahead in the game and will make money in the process. And she's going to Security Exchange Commission. Tomorrow she will testify in Congress, and she's already booked to testify in England in their parliament. So we'll see what happens. It's very interesting allegation. Apparently they went as far as to compare Facebook to tobacco companies, because tobacco companies for generations know that their products are addictive and not good for their health. And never mind, yes, I have stocks of tobacco companies who are paying very good dividends, 7.5%, 8%. And Facebook, great Facebook, with swindling so many people and withholding information. So basically, it's an illegal organization if that's all it's true. They're not paying dividends. So why would I own Facebook if I can own tobacco companies? But Facebook will be will also recognized as a criminal organization. Maybe I should buy their stock as well.
Wait, we got to be real careful. Remember, we got banned on, what was that, YouTube?
We got banned on YouTube, and that's actually going to ask you about, because I know we've got that coming up on Media Monday. By the way, we're talking about the Sierra Club. Apparently, this woman has hired something called Whistleblower Aid, which is a legal nonprofit that represents people seeking to expose potential law breaking. So maybe we need to get in touch with.
Well, I don't think Sierra Club's not breaking the law. See, there's a difference between breaking the law and just being disingenuous and misleading. Okay, being just disingenuous in the United States.
If this was a court of law, I would say lying.
Okay. Or lying. Okay, well, you can say
absolutely lying.
Okay, we call it in law practice. What you have is statements that are inconsistent. Okay, so the thing is, when they did send me this stuff, which they did today or the other day, and we're members, okay, and I read through this whole thing, it's about how they help the environment. All those other issues that you described earlier was not on the letter.
Which I would say is fraud. It's getting a financial benefit by misrepresentation.
Exactly. Well, you actually have a good argument.
If you tell me that you're going to focus in on a particular issue, and then you focus in on other issues
that have nothing to do with it,
and you have not done with my money what I asked you to do.
There's a good argument. If you look at it, okay, it goes, number one, here's what they gave me. Your ongoing involvement helps keep our air clean. Number two, you're active and protects our nation's wildlife and wildlands and wetlife. Number three, your support makes laws greener. And then they went on and they go, we've made good progress in Yosemite, Grand Canyon, Glacier National Park.
On those three issues,
discuss all the other garbage they're doing.
On those three issues,
that all the money goes to their salaries and compensation.
On those three issues, well, I don't have actually a problem with salaries, but on those three issues that they've just brought up, who's on the other side of that? That all sounds really wonderful. I support that. I think that sounds wonderful. I think the work they've done in those national parks is absolutely fantastic. The fact that they've got disproportionate staffing costs, forget about executive pay, the fact that they've got people that they need to pay because people need to go and liaise
people do need to get paid.
and do all that sort of stuff. So I don't have a problem with any of that. What I have a problem with is when all they have focused on is all these sort of very woke political divisive political positions. And I'll just say I'm not familiar with 5014. I am familiar with 5013, 5013C3. But what I will say is I was under the impression that in order to be a not-for-profit or a charity group, unless you were specifically linked and it was known that you were linked to a political party, actually pushing out political positions was a big no-no under tax law. How can they possibly justify being literally anti-Trump? If you personally feel that way, that's fine. But to actually have that as the stated position of a not-for-profit organization that's supposed to be focused on the environment, to be anti-Trump and anti-Republicans altogether, like, what are you doing? I'm not sure how that's even legal, to be perfectly honest.
Well, first off, I think they did change things with those laws and everything. I think that's where that C4 came in. I have to double check with my mom, who used to be involved in that space, because you are right. They're not supposed to be involved in political things of that nature unless you are the part of your agenda is a political agenda, because like I said, that's supposed to be an environmental group, so they would definitely be talking about environmental issues. Now, the other thing that happens sometimes, and this is what I know happens, and it happens on both the corporate level, the nonprofit level, and everything else, is I would be curious, and I don't know whether Nick found this out and everything, how much money they actually put into those organizations that y'all are upset that they are talking about on their page. Because, we had a lot of organizations, including Black Lives Matter, including Me Too, including a bunch of other organizations that asked organizations to make statements in support of whatever they were about. And, even Coca-Cola was known for making statements. That doesn't...
Yeah, and I've stopped buying Coca-Cola. I've stopped buying Coca-Cola. Okay, I don't have any Coca-Cola products in my house. I don't have any of their products at all. I stopped buying them. Okay, and I avoid them as much as I can, not just because of their high sugar count, but to tell white people to be less white. I'm done with Coca-Cola. Thank you very much.
Did they really say
that? They really said that. That's what they really said. That was their staff. That was their staff rules. Right, this went out to all of their employees that you have to be less white. I'll show you some links to it, Nick.
Yeah,
you have to be less white.
You're on Economics Monday.
That is absolutely appalling. So I stopped supporting them. I absolutely love the Sierra Club, Mark. I absolutely love the Sierra Club and what it used to do. The fact that they've gone down this path, I think, is appalling. And I
agree with you that it is appalling, and I agree with you when we had this conversation before. But I'm also just talking to our listeners, because I do know for a fact that there were several organizations that made these statements because they were pushed to make these statements. I mean, we can even look at sports agencies like the NBA, the NFL, and whatever else. But there were organizations that were asked to make like a blanket statement and everything. What I want to know is, come down to that dollar. Are you actually putting your dollar into what you say that you are part of anything, or are you just making a quote unquote statement in order to be quote unquote woke or so quote unquote supportive? That is different to me.
Supportive of what? If you are supporting something which is going to be divisive against half the population of the country, then what you are doing is you're getting rid of potentially half of the support for your organization that you would otherwise get. Okay, why would you do that? Your primary and sole purpose was to focus on environmental issues. This organization, the Sierra Club,
I'll see you on Economics Monday.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We got to get off and everything. But just really quickly, I'm just going to make up one other thing. And this is just like kind of an aside, and I'm sure that Shaquille will enjoy this as well as we get ready to go over to Economics Monday. And we're going to have a great discussion on the media and its banning of things on Media Monday after Economics Monday. But you'll be glad to know, speaking of folks that didn't want their image to be used, Clint Eastwood just recently won a $6 million lawsuit against a Lithuanian company because apparently they used his image to promote a CBD product. So he won it because he wasn't necessarily feeling that was something that he wanted to be behind and all of that. So he went and sued them. Don't mess with Clint. I told you that. Even if you watch his movies, you're not supposed to mess with Clint. And apparently somebody decided to mess with Clint, and he took it out on him. So that's just one of the things that is going on in that regard. Get ready to wrap everything up. I saw that Shaquille and the rest of my guests have bounced off, but we'll be back here tomorrow and looking forward to great conversations once again. But right now, I'm going to bring that lovely image out. I know that they headed over to Economic Monday. I'm hoping that you're doing the same. And I'm also hoping that you are going to join us on this great conversation about the media and the power of the media, and sometimes the ways that they are being repressive and even censoring. So definitely go on over there and check that out as well. And I do want to thank the person that was giving us a chat for coming in and joining the conversation. By the way, I did also see that Kimberly Holmes McCoy, Kimberly Holmes was definitely with us and was definitely listening as well. And we do know that she is one of the co-founders. So glad to have Kimberly coming back and popping in and giving us her insight. And I do want to thank also Cool Gamer, who is the one that you're seeing making some comments as well. So they were joining us from Twitch. So glad that they were joining us from Twitch. And on that note, get ready to get on out of here, and we'll be back on tomorrow. But I'll probably be over there on that discussion on the news as well. Getting on out of here, and y'all have a good one.